Okay. Zoom people, I'm just recording the rest of the meeting. So if you have your cameras on and you want to turn it off, that's fine. But okay, submitting your final draft. So there is a Google form submission. It's linked in the calendar. We'll also send it out via email as usual to submit your final draft. It's due on May 3rd at 11:59 p.m., which is 2 weeks from today. We really can't give extensions on the final draft. Hopefully you all can understand that the e-board also wants to finish up work by the end of the semester. We'll obviously be working on law review stuff over the summer, but it's really hard granting extensions at this late in the semester. So keep in mind that emergencies come up, finals get stressful, and it's really important to submit a note that you feel is best representative of your writing abilities. So keep this in mind over the next 2 weeks and try to get it done before May 3rd so that if any of these things come up, you don't have to ask for an extension necessarily. Important agreements, these are listed on the Google form, but when you submit, you just have to like type your name next to these things. I just wanted to mention them so you don't feel like blindsided by them when you're submitting your final draft. But notes may be randomly checked by a third-party plagiarism checker. Obviously, those things always come up with a percentage of like your plagiarized note, and oftentimes it's high if you have like a ton of citations, but we're not looking for things that are cited. We're looking for things that are not cited in the plagiarism checker. The exact work published in FULR can't be submitted to other journals for publication. That's a common publication practice. It's not specific to FULR, but obviously you can submit your writing to awards or scholarships, but you can't submit the exact writing to other publications. That's just kind of weird. The editorial board may edit your note as we see fit, but we won't make substantive changes without consulting the writer. So we might add like commas or fix your footnotes or italicize stuff, but we won't make like argumentative changes or anything major without consulting you. So keep an eye out on your email for the weeks in May, just in case we email you about a change that we might want to make. Submitting a final draft doesn't guarantee publication. Obviously, like you guys have all been going through this process, taking into consideration all of our feedback, coming to all the meetings. So most likely there will be no problems with getting your note published, but we just like to say this in case someone submits something that we feel is like just really not up to our publication guidelines, in which case we would give you feedback. You could edit it over the summer and then publish it in the fall. But like I said, this is so rare. I don't think we've had a situation like this in a couple semesters. I don't think anyone has anything to be concerned about, but that is why it's there. So you can just sign your name next to that when you submit your final draft. Notes will be publicly available on FULR's website. So just keep that in mind as you're making your final touches. Any questions? Titles. Make sure your title is interesting and captures the point of your note. A lot of you have changed your titles since you first submitted your topic, and I suggest reconsidering them before you submit your final draft, just to make sure that reconsidering obviously doesn't mean changing, but just making sure that your title accurately depicts what your note is about, is interesting to read, is captivating to a wide variety of audiences, and makes a good first impression. So obviously this is just on the print publication, but it applies similarly to the online publication. The titles are listed on the cover of the print publication. So I suggest something that sounds interesting, that looks interesting, and obviously like something that I think captures the point of your note and doesn't confuse the readers or make someone be like, oh, I don't understand what this note could possibly be about. Yeah. Biographies. So we have an example picture here, but you want to make sure you include your major, any minors, your college, your year, and you might want to like thank some people, anyone who helped you, professors, senior editors, mentors, etc. A lot of people like sometimes will use like their like third person, like Caroline is a senior at whatever political science. Like you don't need to do that. Just say like BA candidate for political science and environmental studies, and then just give your thanks and then be done. There are tons of examples. Obviously, you could go through any of our notes or volumes and see examples of what people have done, but this is a good formula example. Yeah. Citations and page numbers. I noticed that over the past couple issues of the law review, a lot of people have been omitting the page number citation. So I just want to reiterate this. Oh, I have this like, it is very rare. Clearly, I never finished that thought. So when you're citing anything that has a page number in it, you have to include the page number in the citation. So if you're citing a case, you don't just cite the case, you cite the case and the specific page number that the information appeared on. Sometimes you might be citing the whole case like as a whole, but that's pretty rare because usually you got the information from at least like one page. Same thing with law review articles, books. The only thing that usually doesn't have a page number is websites. But books, law review articles, journal articles, and cases are the big ones. So on Nexus Uni, you can find the page numbers for law review articles and court cases. They're in the bold bracketed numbers that you can see on the screen. I circled it in red. Those are the page numbers, so you can follow along easily on there. If you find like a PDF of a law review article, the PDF usually has accurate page numbers as well. If you can't find something that has a page number, let us know and we'll help you locate a source or like a way to access that source that will have the page numbers listed. But it's really, really important, like if you quote something and you don't list the page number, it creates more work for the readers. Sometimes readers might want to go see what the context of the quote was said in. And obviously like plagiarism issues, you just want to have the page number listed. Yeah, any questions? Yes.
How do you know which one is the page number? Because sometimes you see two numbers like that.
Yes, that's a good question. The bold one.
Okay.
So it's always like the black bold one in brackets. The other numbers, to be honest, I'm not really sure what they're for, but the bold ones are the page numbers. And if there's no bold one, then email us and we'll help you.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question. Any other questions? Okay, cool. Okay, spell check and grammar check. We have experienced that Google Docs does not catch typos and grammatical errors. There are some notes that we have found to have tons of typos, not to the fault of any writer or editor. If Google Docs doesn't catch it, it's very easy for us to read over it and not even realize the typo, as I'm sure you guys have all experienced. Please run your note through a more powerful program like spell check on Microsoft Word, or download Grammarly. It's a free Chrome extension. Really, really important. It helps us a lot, saves the e-board a lot of time, which in turn will get the notes published online faster. So yes, please do that. Okay, concluding your note. A lot of writers expressed concern on the full draft submission Google form about concluding your note and not really sure like good strategies to conclude your note. New information, I think it's like generally in high school, but I think a lot of people say like, no new information in the conclusion. New information is like okay if it's relating to broad implications of your note. So maybe there's like a case that's coming up in the Supreme Court that you think your argument applies to, and you want to mention that. Or there could be new legislation coming up, or it relates to a different case that you might have thought of and you want to relate it. I think new information is okay, as long as it's not acting as evidence for your argument, but rather just working toward the broad implications and overall statement of your note. The goal is to make your reader feel some type of closure in your argument. I think that's a difficult thing to do, but that's kind of the general goal of the conclusion. Tips for the last sentence could be to tie the title of your note into the last sentence, a call to action. Maybe you want to call on legislatures to enact particular legislation, predictions or hopes for the future. Overall, I would encourage you guys to check out the Fordham Law Review notes and read. Conclusion sentences don't need to be like profound or philosophical or like big influential sentences. I think contrary to like a lot of our writing day to day for our classes, the Fordham Law Review notes, like the sentences just kind of end, and they're just like the last sentence of the note works to improve the argument and further the argument just as much as any other sentence. So I don't think it's important to necessarily have like this broad, philosophical, confusing sentence as the last sentence. It might just be more effective to just end your note. But I think definitely if you look up like Fordham Law Review, they have the section on student notes. You can click on any of those PDFs and read through their conclusions. And I think that they will hopefully give you some direction as to how to conclude your note. Unfortunately, I don't have like more specific advice. Conclusions are something personally that I always have struggled with. And I think conclusions are generally the most difficult part of the note, just because you've put so much work into the research and writing that you want it to feel like you have closure at the end. I think it's important to remember that a lot of these issues don't have a lot of closure, where a lot of people are writing about really important civil rights cases or really important criminal cases and contracts. And a lot of these don't have like particular, like fulfilling closing thoughts that you can give. And I think that that might be a good way to end your note, is maybe a prediction or a hope for the future. But overall, that's my advice. I think definitely check out some other law review articles and see what they might have done. And it obviously differs so much depending on the note. Okay, so last point is abstracts. Abstracts are only written for the print publication. So if you're an online writer, no need to do an abstract. Assume your readers will not read the abstract. You don't want to give information in the abstract that's important to your note that you don't otherwise say. The abstract is meant for someone to like read it, see if the note is something they might be interested in reading. Maybe they're not interested in it, and that's okay. At least they have the abstract, which is a short form of your note just to explain what it's about. And they can move on, or they can know that they need to read your whole note. Abstracts are really helpful if we're conducting research for our papers in class as well. You can read an abstract of an article that you might want to cite in a paper and automatically realize that it's not relevant to your research, and then you saved yourself time by not reading that paper. Assume a similar situation for your abstracts for the law review notes. No more than 250 words, 1 paragraph or 2 short paragraphs, no footnotes. The reason that no footnotes is okay is because everything that you say in your abstract will be later stated at some point in your note with a proper citation. So you don't need to cite that information in your abstract. The only instance where you can use information and not cite it. My suggestion is to start with around 2 sentences, introducing the broad themes of your note, and then use the rest of the space to explain what your note does or what you argue. So similar to the roadmap of the introduction, you can use language such as this note examines, this note analyzes, this note argues, this note contextualizes. There's a lot of good options in terms of how to word those points. I created a document with several sample abstracts in the shared publication drive, and we also have a YouTube video on how to write abstracts. All of the sample abstracts are from Fordham Law Review articles. I think all of them are 2 paragraphs, 2 short paragraphs, but it doesn't really matter if you do 1 or 2 paragraphs. We don't have a preference. So yeah, that's all I have, I think. Oh yeah, I'm gonna stop recording.